All right, the search is still on for those 10 missing sailors after the USS John McCain collided with a tanker off the coast of Singapore. This occurring just weeks after the USS Fitzgerald crash. And now the U.S. Navy wants some answers as to how this sort of thing happens again. I mean, ships don't really move that fast, so you'd think something would telegraph this or help avoid this. The former Navy SEAL Team 6-member Dave Sears with us right now. Dave, how does this keep happening?
Neil, it's got to be a systemic piece that's underneath the surface. It's a leadership to begin with. That's a short-term piece. So the leaders aren't doing their jobs on this. This should have never happened.
Who are the leaders you're talking about, though?
I'm talking about the leaders from the top down. So you can go from, you could probably start this back with President Obama, the administration, and what happened through the Defense Department. But then it's the leaders that are in charge now. The people in charge of the Pacific Fleet, the people in charge of 7th Fleet. As they're in charge of these ships, there's got to be a culture that they're not promoting. There's something wrong systemically. All
right, but obviously ships don't move all that fast, so there'd be a way to telegraph if they're going to be colliding into each other. Someone even on deck would have to see this. Excuse my simple ignorance here, but how does it happen?
No, that's why this is so baffling, and why, to me, it indicates structural problems under the surface with the leadership and the culture of what's going on.
But there are culture, so many redundant... I mean, how would the culture have to do with just looking outside and seeing what's around you?
Because if your watchstanders aren't doing their job, so there's redundant systems on there. You have radar, you have watchstanders with night vision, with big eyes. We call them binoculars, big eyes, right?
Right.
And they're watching all that, but if they're not attentive on their watch stations, if they're slack in their duties, if they're relying too much on automation rather than fundamental seamanship skills, then that's the culture that's underneath, and that's being promoted. Then you don't have that attention to detail, and things like this happen that should never happen.
Yeah, I think at the outset I could see with fighter jets or a collision over Syrian airspace. I've always worried about that between a Russian jet fighter and an American jet fighter, because we don't obviously have like air patrols there to do that sort of thing. But this is getting to be a big problem, and in this particular case, if I'm North Korea, if I'm Kim Jong-un, I'm beginning to think, wow, these guys have serious problems here. I can keep doing whatever the heck I want.
I agree. The U.S. Navy should be the pinnacle of seamanship and demonstrate that nonstop. They are deployed a lot. They are at sea a lot. They're doing a lot of operations, which then can lead to some accidents that do happen. But percentage-wise, they should be very small, and it is sending a message that's a little bit disconcerting.
Do you get a sense that obviously, one of the stories I've heard is that a lot of these guys are overworked. A number of ships, I don't know, in the 2 that we cited, are being repositioned. That this changes the fatigue factor. I'm just grasping at straws here. What do you think?
I think that it's a combination of those things. Certainly, there could be a fatigue factor. You have to look at each individual one to see what the indicators are for that. But the ships have been deployed a long time overseas. Are they exceeding their 6-month deployment schedule? How long have they been out there? That can lead to fatigue on that. That said, that's not an excuse. Yeah. We should be able to power through that. It's the same one, I've heard also the one on the budget, and it says we need more money for more training. Well, I'm not always on board with that either. Let's look at what are we training towards, and do we have the right ratio of administrative to actual warfighting skills.
Dave, I'd be remiss if I didn't bring this up ahead of the President's speech tonight. What do you want to hear out of him?
I want to hear what is our end goal in Afghanistan. Only from that can we derive any kind of a strategy or even talk about troop levels or talk about withdrawals. What are we trying to achieve? I think we need to move away from this nation building. The sad part is I say this, though, Neil, I know that's not what I'm going to hear. I'm going to hear probably the conventional piece. Odds are that we're going to add some more troops. I do not think that that is necessarily the right answer if you have not looked at the why. Why are we there? What are we trying to achieve?
And 3,000 or 4,000 more troops would or would not make a difference.
That all goes back to what's our end state. If we're trying to do nation building, they will not make a difference. The whole tradition, you go back to Afghanistan, it's run from Kabul and Kandahar. Those are 2 sections. You can't control the outside. They're not going to make a difference.
Dave, you made a difference. Former Navy SEAL Team 6 member, the toughest of the tough. Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Neil.